I'm a dreamer. I want us to be the Bigfoot capital for real, the first city to have one. But that's my dream.
Bigfoots have been reported all over the world, and especially the good old US of A. Over the years, there's been a mess of sightings in the Pacific Northwest. That's the birthplace of the Patterson film, of course, which has been pulled apart and studied almost as much as that Kennedy assassination film. But over the last few years, another part of the country has had their own slew of sightings. A little town you might have passed on Interstate 65. A little place called Evergreen, Alabama.
Evergreen's the county seat of Connecticut County. A lot of people, work here.
I've been here pretty much all my life, except for the times I left for school or for the military or whatnot.
Most of the things that are going on in Connecticut County are going on in, here in Evergreen.
Everybody pretty much knows everybody.
People are very nice, supportive of each other, supportive of the community.
I started grammar school here. Been here all my life.
I'm a nurse anesthetist at the local hospital up here. I've been doing that for 15 years.
I don't think I would have wanted to live anywhere else.
I was born and raised in the adjoining county, Monroe County, but I've been in Evergreen almost 30 years doing the radio.
Good morning, y'all. It's 5 minutes past 6 o'clock. We're at 62 degrees right here at the Power Pig on a Monday morning.
Well, people that come to Evergreen, a lot of them, they get off the interstate. We're halfway between Montgomery and Mobile, and we're a stopping destination.
It's an old area. A lot of old communities around here. That time is pretty much forgotten.
But it's one of those little towns that when the textile mills left, it got affected just like some of the surrounding towns did.
Back in the day, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, it was a big thriving community. Yellow fever, Civil War wiped a lot of these little towns out, but you can still see the buildings. And there was nothing to hunt around here, especially as a kid coming up and finding old unmarked graves and cemeteries in some of these old communities that just had been forgotten.
The interstate really made the population mobile. People, rather than shopping in town, they'll go to out of town, so that really hurt.
Evergreen is not only a place full of Bigfoot sightings, it's also the official Bigfoot capital of Alabama.
We became the Bigfoot capital of Alabama in November of 2017.
The state legislature, they even passed a resolution officially naming Evergreen the Bigfoot capital of Alabama.
There's talk about us having a Bigfoot festival instead of, we have a collard green festival too.
We have a sausage festival in the fall, and a fly-in, and a rodeo, all wrapped into one, car shows, and then we've got a collard green festival coming up.
Now, all three of those events have Bigfoot calling contests.
Some folk might laugh at such a thing, but not all.
It began here at the newspaper on an average typical Tuesday in July of 2016. Our office manager goes to check the mail, and she brings back the mail, and she drops a letter on my desk, handwritten, but it's unsigned. Basically, it begins with the writer saying, "Hey, look, we're not saying we saw a Bigfoot, but," and then they go on to describe a classic Bigfoot encounter. And they were driving along 84, and this creature that they described as looking like a Bigfoot or like a hairy ape came up the side of the road, the ditch there, and leaped over the road and continued off into the woods. It was kind of a slow week. I told one of my colleagues in the office, I'm going to do a little story on this and just kind of run it at the bottom of the page. It took off from there. After the story came out in the paper, about half a dozen people almost immediately contacted me to say, "Hey, look, I think I've seen what these people are talking about."
So, what are these creatures? Did they form from cavemen? Are they a branch of ape? Bear? What makes a Bigfoot a Bigfoot? I mean, what the hell do these things look like?
We know from samples that we have taken that it is a primate. samples that we had tested was actually blood. Had a geneticist test it. First thing they come back with is, well, it's definitely not a human. The second thing they come back with was, it's definitely a primate, but it's not a primate in any of the scientific journals or anything else. It's an undocumented, unclassified ape.
I think it's, some people say Gigantopithecus, which I think could be a very good explanation for these things.
They've got to be primate, though, because they're walking on, 2 feet.
And we know it's not human.
There was one guy, he was on his way home, I remember, and he crossed this creek, this bridge, and almost immediately after he crosses the bridge, he sees this Bigfoot kind of clawing into a tree, and his idea was that there was some type of food or maybe like an insect or something like that the thing was trying to get and eat. This guy told me it shook him up so bad, and this was a big grown man, that was coming home from working in a factory, and he said he was never taking that way home again. It legitimately spooked him.
I don't believe in all the paranormal stuff. There's a lot of weird stories out there with these things. Until we get one, you're never going to know. But to me, I agree with exactly what he said. This is a great primate. It is an old, ancient primate that's smarter than your average bear.
All the descriptions are virtually the same. Every one I've heard, and I've heard hundreds of them.
Each one of these creatures has, they're different just like humans. They have a different facial feature to them. There's similarities, but you can expect the deep, dark set eyes, the heavy brow ridge. They'll have blocky teeth, but they will have canines. The mouth will be real wide. It'll be just like a slit. There'll be very, very small lips. You won't be able to see much on the lips. They're just very small and a wide mouth. Ears will be small, close to the head. If you come across a big alpha male, he may have long hair hanging off his head onto his shoulders. They may be really hairy or may be sparsely haired, and of course it could have to do with the seasons too, the colder months and the warmer months.
As man has gone more towards civilization, these things just went deeper into the woods, and they're the ultimate survivalists, and they are. They're smart. They ain't gonna crank your car and drive a truck off, but they're very intelligent. They know how to survive.
If you got a big, an alpha male, an old alpha male, and he may be 10, 11, 12 foot tall. But on average, you're gonna see 7 to 8 foot tall on average.
There are some stories you get where it looks a lot like a man in the face, but most of the reports around here look more like a gorilla. But one of the good reports that I had was one drowning a deer, and I've got a video of that, where the man was working on a camp house on the river, and there's not many things around here that's going to drown a 150-pound deer, but you can hear the deer hollering. And you can see something reaching towards it, and it looks like it has a snout.
People that do believe in these creatures say there's no belief in it. They know it to be true, and they sure can be passionate about it. But what makes a person become a believer?
These creatures are reported all over the world. Hundreds of reports, maybe thousands over the years. If one of them is legit, who's to say they aren't all legit?
The Bigfoot thing has always fascinated me, but I can't believe so many different names exist for them, and they don't exist. I've never seen God, but I believe He exists too.
But there's just been too much, there's too many TV shows, too much talk going on for the things not to exist. And I believe they do, but like I said, I've never seen one.
Native Americans believed in a wild man type creature, especially out west in the Pacific Northwest. A lot of the Indians had totems for these Bigfoot type creatures. Anthropologists thought that these sculptures and totems were of monkeys, but there are no native monkeys to North America. So where did they get this idea from, I don't know.
Just about every place has a name, like a Yeti or abominable snowman or Sasquatch or Rookaroos in Louisiana. I don't know how they could have got together and planned all that. But yes, I kind of think they might.
They say he exists and people talk about it, and I'll leave it at that.
And we recently had a man that was coming from Greenville, with his son. There was something standing beside one of the road signs, and he said it was taller than the road sign, with broad shoulders and standing with its arms down like that. And he said, "Did you see that?" "Yes, sir, I did." He said, "What did you see?" And he told him. Those kind of stories. You know, what did they see?
Typically every July, I'll do a story kind of rehashing how the letter came to the paper. And I asked, the writer of this letter to, hey, call us and let us know this was you, because to this day, 4 years later, I have no idea who wrote that letter. I don't even necessarily want to put them in the newspaper. I just kind of want to know for myself, who this was that kind of started the recent, reports of Bigfoot.
The radio station here, I mean, they talk about it on the radio station. So you've got people calling in, giving reports.
I had a hunting show, and I just call in and do like a little hunting report. Well, then Lee started talking about where some saw some on the Sepulga River, made it into the newspaper. It kind of exploded. And I said, "Lee," I said, "Hey, I want to talk to you, but off the record." And then me and him started talking about it, and eventually started talking about it on the air. And then the hunting report turned into the Bigfoot report on Wednesday mornings. You'd be surprised at the people that would tune in, and even some people coming to the hospital. "Oh, you're the guy on the Bigfoot show, man. I listen every Wednesday morning." They really find it intriguing. And most people, if they don't have a story themselves, they'll tell you, "Well, you know what? My daddy always told me this," or "My granddaddy always told me that," or "I knew somebody that had this happen to him," and just more stories come out.
Well, we got to playing with it out here at the radio station, and we had, a lot of people would call in. There's been quite a few sightings around here.
First time I've ever heard of one, and I grew up in the woods down on the south end of Monroe County. I've been in the woods all my life. I was stationed at the Marine Barracks in Bremerton, Washington, and I first heard about them there, and they called them Sasquatches. And I had guys that claimed they'd seen one.
Well, I've always been fascinated with it. It's always intrigued me, but I never really took it serious. I always thought maybe it was just one, and it was something that's probably extinct or dead by now. I never really knew there was as many reports as there are down here. There's tons of stories around here, tons of legends that go back 100 years.
Anyway, I got the idea to approach our state senator, and I said, "Why don't you introduce legislation to make Evergreen the Bigfoot capital of Alabama?" I didn't think anything else about it, and then one day he shows up with it.
We really, grew interested in it. We figured it would be a good way to draw commerce into Evergreen.
Well, I think it's really good that they've done this here, because it brings attention about Bigfoot to the community, and more people will come forward and talk about it in the outlying area. They're like, "Hey, we're having problems with these things over here. Now we have an outlet. They're positive over there. They're admitting it exists, whereas before it's really been tight-lipped. It's just one of those things you don't talk about because you're afraid people will laugh at you. And I wish more, communities would do this, because then more people could bring their stories out.
I agree with Mr. Bobby on the fact that it can help some people come forward, but I also think that some people will find it very ridiculous.
Well, there always will be people you can't please them with a pleasing machine, but we have some of those too, I think, but not too many of them.
It's a mixed bag. A lot of people have accepted it. They kind of get a kick out of it. They kind of like the idea that it's possible that something like this lives in the community.
Sure, some might be embarrassed about becoming the Bigfoot capital, but others found a way to use it to help promote the town.
We bought an 8-foot-tall Bigfoot and put it out by the interstate.
Luther Upton, he's a member of the city council. He and the mayor are 100% behind promoting the city of Evergreen.
There's a statue out at the 96 exit, and that's where we have a new grocery store, and we have a shrimp basket and Shoney's, and we're growing. And then Connecticut Sausage is building a huge store across the road.
And some people were complaining about us buying a statue, but it was all by private funds. People donated to buy that statue.
Well, we raised the money here on the radio to pay for it, and so tax dollars wasn't used.
Since we're the collard green capital, I think we should have a big, gigantic, monstrous collard green that you can see from the interstate to come get your picture made by that.
I'll tell you who told me about it. Dr. Cartwright.
October, I went to cruising the coast in Biloxi. We were staying in Ocean Springs, and across the road from our hotel there was it's a Mardi Gras place, but they also have a lot of statues and pots and odd looking things out front, and we just stopped by there to look. Just happened to look over and I said, hey, there's a Bigfoot statue. Old man and woman, as a hobby, they had bought a Bigfoot statue, a mold. And I would think it would be very expensive. And it has rebar and reinforcing wire in it. The lady told me it weighed 2,500 pounds. And I don't know why Luther decided to move on it, but it was there the next week. It came to Evergreen.
So I sent a truck down and we bought one of them.
Well, Luther kind of proposed this idea of, having a statue, kind of a place where people could come and have their picture taken with it, and just kind of be in Evergreen, and again take advantage of maybe the gas stations and the hotels and the restaurants.
Brought it back and carried it out to the Sausage Festival. It weighs like 3,000 pounds. And the kids just, man, they were all over it. Then we moved it from out there out to the interstate. It's caused a lot of attention.
We picked a spot where he would be seen, but we didn't realize that he would get as much action as he actually does.
I think in particular with the Evergreen, because I think it could go either way. I really do. I think it could be good and help the town, and then again, I think it could be bad and bring a lot of people in there and harass some of the folks and that don't want to talk to anybody, and people stomping all over the woods, and you sure don't want to do that during hunting season around here because everybody hunts. So that could be dangerous too.
Yeah, some people objected to it and didn't like it and thought it was tacky, but
Every community's got those people that walk around with their nose in the air, think they're a little bit better than everybody else, and it degrades them to be known as a resident of the Bigfoot capital of Alabama.
there again, it's about promoting the city and the county, and that's what it's done. And it's brought a lot of tax revenue in. It's a novelty. I mean, everybody that comes here from out of town wants to stop, get their picture made with it.
I think it's been good for the community. When the national championship game was over, and people from Louisiana were coming back down I-65 from Atlanta, there was a constant line of people having their picture made with it. And this is an amazing attraction.
Our Bigfoot statue is huge. It weighs 2,500 pounds. He got some Mardi Gras beads the other day. The negative ones speak out a lot, but there's not that many of them. It's been very accepting, I think, of it, in my opinion.
I was at my ophthalmologist, and the doctor's wife said, "You're from Evergreen." I said, "Yeah, you know where it is?" "Oh, yeah, that's where Bigfoot is." So that's what, that's one of the things, try to draw some attention to the town, get people to stop and eat or do whatever they're going to do,
I was actually there the day that they put the Bigfoot statue in place, and they had this huge crane, and it was blistering cold. It was really cold. The wind was blowing, and my eyes started watering, a little bit. I had like water going in my face, and I was just standing there, and this random city employee says, "Man, this Peacock guy, he's really getting emotional." I said, "It's freezing out there, man. I'm about to die." he thought I was getting all emotional about the statue and all. I was like, no, I'm not crying. It's just this wind, It's the best moment of my life. It's like, oh, it's probably happening in the Bigfoot statue, but no, I said, no, it's just cold.
I mean, again, I don't really have no feelings about it one way or the other. I mean, there's a lot of people that think it's cool, and there's people that will pull off the interstate to go in there and take pictures of it. And anytime you get people coming into your town to visit, they may stop and shop too, So, I mean, I think it's good for the town. I mean, I think it makes people stop in there that maybe normally wouldn't stop in Evergreen, Alabama.
I mean, a lot of people just go out to the statue like at lunchtime just to see it, or go by there just to check on it, I do that. I have no business out there sometimes. I go out just to check on him, be sure he's okay. It's kind of catching on a little bit.
Then we have the Collard Green Festival coming up on March 7th, and we'll have a Bigfoot calling contest then.
We kind of incorporate Bigfoot with the Sausage Festival, and he will be with the Collard Green Festival, he'll be incorporated in with that. We have a calling contest, and we give away prize money for that.
As stories of Bigfoot have gotten more and more well known, Bigfoot groups have started to appear all around the country, organizing and collaborating on efforts to learn more about these creatures.
I'm the founder of the Gulf Coast Bigfoot Research Organization. We're based out of Texas. We cover pretty much all your southern states. You know, we do everything, via the internet. We've got social media, we do our, we've also, we got our messenger and everything else, and then we've got our phone. We're constantly in contact via text or instant messenger, and when it's something really important, we'll do one of those, 5 or 6 way calls. I mean, we got all of us on a phone call, and we also do the FaceTime, get everybody involved and bring everybody up to snuff what's happening and what the plans are, and everybody have a group discussion on everything. So we don't have meetings like we don't go to a specific address and everybody come in and have a round table discussion. We do it now with the modern technology. We have people that contact us, and these things are coming up to their house. They're looking in their windows, they're banging on the house, they're killing their pets, their dogs, and we've even had cats killed. Their farm animals are getting killed. If we have somebody that's having a lot of aggressive activity, we get there as soon as possible. But we may not have another person having that type of activity, for a couple of months, and then we get it investigated. We see it's legit, they're having this activity, we plan the hunt, and so it could be from a month to 3, 4, 5, 6 months, just kind of depends if somebody's having a lot of aggressive activity or not.
Most hunters in the woods, they hunt, they hear something, they kind of dismiss it or don't think much about it unless it's something that's really drastic. I was the same way. Now, though, I'm more tuned in. I try to listen, I try to pay attention to stuff that normally the normal person that really don't believe or don't know wouldn't pay attention to.
But there have been too many reputable people who have seen these things. And if there wasn't something to it, somebody asked me, if you've never seen one, how you know they exist? I said, I've never seen God either, but I know he's there.
You don't have to believe. But for the most part, you get in front of somebody and talk to them and start telling them some of the stories. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, I see that.
It's not unusual here at the newspaper for somebody to pull up outside with a big deer that they want their photo taken with, or an unusually large bobcat that they want to, have their picture snapped in the paper. To me, the ultimate moment would be the day that I'm sitting here and somebody pulls up and says, you ain't gonna believe what I got in the back of my truck. I'm gonna take that camera and I'm gonna take as many pictures as possible, and I'm probably gonna retire because I'm gonna be the guy that has the photos of the real live, Bigfoot.
Somewhere, if a Bigfoot exists, somebody has a relationship with it, but they're gonna be protective of it. But if we talk to them, told them we want it, we want people to see it, we want to take care of it, we're going to call President Trump, we're going to call Governor Ivey, we're going to have the National Guard when we bring it in here. The Bigfoot will be under 24-hour surveillance. The government's not going to get it. You'll have all the credit. You can see it anytime you want to. Whatever kind of habitat we think he or she or it would like, we'll give it that. We want a happy Bigfoot.
But in all seriousness, to me, that would be the ultimate kind of thing that I can't see anything that would be more of a bigger than that. Because for people that are skeptics, a body, alive or dead, is going to be what's going to prove the existence one way or the other of these type creatures. I know there have been a lot of hoaxes over the years of people with Bigfoot, bodies in their freezers and stuff like that. But if some old Joe just pulls up outside the newspaper, one on the back of his truck, that's going to be hard to deny.
If you know about such a thing, tell me about it. I know somebody that can help us catch it. He'll take care of it for us. He'll help us tame it down. He has a way with animals. It'll know we're trying to see about it.
I'm the new guy with the hunt team on the GCBRO.
I've got a good buddy over here in this area. His name's Ashley McFall. He's been doing local Bigfoot research here for years. He's contacted me and he's like, hey, Bobby, I got some stuff going on. You think you can load up and head over here and, give me a hand and let's see what we can get into over here. Myself and several of the guys from some of the other states, we've had them from Mississippi and Oklahoma as well. We all came over here, and we'll cover our own areas, but when we have something big come up or it's more than what we can handle, we call the other guys and we all load up and get together and go in as a team.
And the thing I like about it is these guys are very sincere in what they do.
They've seen them. They've actually seen the things.
I mean, we got a long history of doing this, and a lot of years and years of experience. And when we all get together, we bring in all of our years of experience together.
The purpose in life is to track these things. And I think they were going hunting yesterday afternoon for one. I don't think they had any intentions of killing it. I just think they wanted to get pictures or something of it,
Most of the reports that I've gotten, it'll surprise you. If you go and put them on a map, there's huge clusters. And all seem, probably 90% of them are within a 20-mile radius. And it stretches anywhere from Repton to Burnt Corn, Pine Orchard. Burnt Corn Creek has tons of reports on it, which has always been a major travel area, even for the settlers. Not everything you see is a Bigfoot. Not every limb you see snap is a Bigfoot. These guys take it very seriously, and when you go and they talk to people, they treat them with a lot of respect. And actually, I was impressed by that. There was a lot of houses we went to and would look around in Louisiana and everything and be like, nah, guys, there's nothing here. And it would tell them, I don't think you got a Bigfoot coming up here. I think this is what's going on. That's what I think kind of separates them from some of the others.
People are seeing these things, but they don't know how to deal with them. So they're contacting us and they're like, hey, can y'all help us? Well, we'll send a team out, the closest team we have to them, to investigate and see if they actually have going on what they're saying. They report back to the rest of us, look guys, I found tracks, I found, this, I sat out there, I heard some screams, the whole 9 yards, there's no doubt they're there. Basically, we'll plan a hunt.
I think this creature, as Mr. Bob said, is a wild animal, and a wild animal is unpredictable.
It depends on how aggressive the creature is. If it's a real aggressive creature and the people want it gone, we will go in there loaded for bear, and we'll set up guys in strategic locations. And if it comes in, we do plan to take the shot. But the fact that when we go in there and get set up, a lot of times these things, they'll see us there and they'll back away. 3, 6, 9, 12 months or longer, these things will back away and not bother the people no more. It pushes them out and gets them away from them. And then we give the people, ideas on things they can do to help keep them pushed away. And, then we leave, with a promise, look, if they come back, call us, we'll come back and we'll do this again.
Do I think there are some that are more shy than others? I do. I think there are some that will probably could live around your house and you'd probably never know it was there. You might hear some weird stuff or see something every now and then, but for the most part, leave you alone. But I think all of them have a potential to be dangerous.
There are several reasons we do what we do, but for the people that thinks these things are just so friendly and everything, they're not. You've got too many people thinking these are Harry Henderson off the movie. I call them Bigfoot romantics because they live in a world different from reality and everything is a peaceful creature. No, a wild animal is not a peaceful creature. It's a wild animal and you got to treat it as such. What was it, that guy with the bears? He's out there going to live among the bears and stuff. Well, they're wild animals and we know what happened to him. You've got people all the time saying, yeah, well, I seen it and it was real peaceful and it just walked by just real peacefully. Yeah, I've had those encounters myself. I've seen them multiple times, but I've also had aggressive encounters. You come up on a coyote, that son of a gun 9 out of 10 times is going to run from you. It may be half starved, half to death, and you come up on it, it don't run. It tries to attack you. It's a wild animal, and that's all these things are.
And a lot of people feel the same way. This thing can kill you in a heartbeat.
They don't bother me, I'm not gonna bother them.
Every living thing has different temperaments to it. You got people that are good people, and you got people that are just bad and evil, and they will do harm to you. You got dogs that are just friendly and lovable. You got some dogs, them suckers are just mean, will eat you up. There's reports of children being taken, coming up missing, them abducting females and whatnot. You Native Americans have got stories about this as well. I mean, it's a long, long history of things like this happening. You know, there's hunters that come up missing, you know, all the time. They're never found. I don't have proof that Bigfoot did it, but I know that there's incidents in the past where they have taken women and children, so it wouldn't surprise me a bit if they've gotten some of these hunters as well.
I'll tell you what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid it's just a matter of time till somebody shows up at the newspapers with one on the hood of the truck. And I don't want to see anything happen to them.
I don't remember any reports where they describe Bigfoot as aggressive. Most of them are what I would call chance encounters, usually by motorists, you know, people that are just riding along. I've had reports of people that are on there that work the night shift and they're on their way home.
I tell Lee every year, I said, Lee, if we have a good snow, let's get all the Bigfoot people that have an interest, and let's go down to Murder Creek to the swamp, and let's get about 20 feet apart, and let's walk from one end of that swamp to the other. If a Bigfoot's passed through, we'll find his track. Yes, I do have an interest in that, but I don't think we could manhandle one down.
When they die, what happens to their bones? Nobody's ever found a Bigfoot skull. Now, one man said that he shot one, and before he could get to him, 3 or 4 more ran out of the woods and grabbed him and took off with it.
But on the one particular hunt we went on, knew the area, looked at the area the day before, talked with the people, found some big trails, set up, and we had some activity that night. And these people were so relieved, just like nobody believes our story. People think I'm crazy, and for you guys to come up here and look around and say I'm not crazy, there really is something like that out here. You can just see the relief on their faces.
But when you're out there by yourself and you know you're scared to talk about it, you don't want to be laughed about. You're basically on an island. You're all alone. You have no help because you know you don't know who to talk to.
And it makes you feel good. They'd call us back or text or email us and say, "Man, we appreciate that. My cows are good. You know, nothing has attacked us anymore. You know, the whole place just feels different." And it just kind of drove them out for a little while.
We're helping the people tell their story, but we're also helping the community and the people as a whole, because if these creatures are coming up to your home and they're harassing you, I guarantee you there's somebody else that's having their home harassed as well. And these people may call and talk to somebody, and these may not. Because, I don't know, there's a taboo-ness about Bigfoot. A lot of people don't want to talk about it because you've got other people out here saying, oh yeah, they're aliens, you know, and this and that. And it's a flesh and blood creature. You know, you've got everybody else out here saying this otherworldly stuff, and they're like, yeah, those guys are a bunch of nuts. So, you know, you got people here that are like, they're needing help, but they don't want to come forward and say anything because, you know, hey, we're going to be laughed at because, you know, we've laughed at these other people that were saying this stuff. They have nobody to call. Actually, we're helping the whole community when we go in. Oftentimes than not, we've got legitimate stories, but that's where the years of research have came in. And I listen to the people when they talk. I listen for certain key things. If they say certain things that doesn't jive with what I know to be fact, I know they're embellishing. And when I find them embellishing one thing, I'm listening to find for other embellishments. Then I ask them key questions. And depending on their answer, then I'll know if they're feeding me a line or not.
I'd like to see one of them, but I want something between me and it. And I sure wouldn't shoot one of them. But some of these rednecks will. And I don't want to see that happen.
There are more Bigfoot stories in Evergreen than you can shake a stick at. People from all walks of life have made reports. But what makes for a believable Bigfoot story?
When I put on my reporter hat, I take it serious. I'm documenting facts. I want the who, the what, the when, the where.
There have been some stories that's come in, I will say, that like there were some people, and Lee can tell you more, that was coming in on the interstate, saw 2 of them standing beside the road and started researching and figured out Evergreen was the Bigfoot capital of Alabama. Then they called and said, hey, let me tell you what we saw.
I actually have a questionnaire that I developed for people that call me with reports so that I don't forget to ask them stuff, because there are a lot of details that kind of go into a report. But whenever, you know, I'm on the street and people say, hey, look, you had any Bigfoot reports lately? You know, we kind of have fun with it.
They seem to like it around water. I actually saw a video that a logger took of one catching and drowning a deer. Now, you know, you got to be pretty quick to catch a deer.
Yeah, I mean, it was a man working on a camp house down on the river and saw a doe, and he was watching the doe, and this was probably 120 to 150 pound doe. Ran behind the pond and heard the doe just a lot of racket, hollering and screaming. You can hear something else screaming. Grabbed his phone, started recording, and got there on it and saw it with both hands around its neck, drowning it in that creek. And he couldn't believe what he was seeing, and he actually cut the video off because he got excited and took off running. And you can see something in there. And then what I didn't know, I sent it to an expert, and there was actually a big one on the bank that looks like about an 800-pound gorilla that was on the bank. I think it was a big one showing the little one maybe how to kill a deer. I don't know. The deer actually survived. He went back later with a friend, and the deer was panting but couldn't move. It was all stiff from fighting this thing, and eventually hobbled off. But, you know, so he saved the deer anyway.
I think the thing that kind of links them all in common are bodies of water, like the Sepulga River, Burnt Corn Creek, Murder Creek. Almost all the reports maybe aren't right on a creek, but they're pretty close. Murder Creek, you cross Murder Creek Bridge there at exit 93. There have been, gosh, I don't know how many reports. I even got a report from a lady from Birmingham that had no idea about Evergreen and Bigfoot. She calls me up one day and she says, "Hey, I saw something really weird at exit 93. And I said, "What was it?" And she describes this classic Bigfoot encounter.
But there's a lady, she's got a whole family of them living on her place, and she sees them all the time, but she didn't want anybody to know about her because tourists will, you know, they'll come from everywhere down there, and if they go down there and start messing with the Bigfoot folks, she's afraid the Bigfoot folks will start messing with them, and you know, she kind of likes to maintain the peace.
You know that they're out there and you've heard a lot of stories. You still try to talk yourself out of probably what you saw, or you try to come up with another explanation, at least I do. Even up there where I hunt now, I had no clue till me and Lee Peacock were talking, and there's some guys that lived right down the road up there, less than a mile from where I hunt, that had all kind of experiences, very similar experiences of what we were having up there. So you start putting pieces of the puzzle together and you're like, okay, something's going on. Here's my thing. I've probably got 100 reports from around here or more, going back to the 70s. And you can throw half of them out for mistaken identity. Some people will just flat out lie to you. Throw them out. But what's the odds that all 100 of them are wrong? It's a lie or mistaken identity. To me, the odds of that are slim to none. I'm not the smartest man in the world, but you know, I think a statistician would tell you that's probably, there's something to that.
The one that comes immediately to mind is the story of the Ackerman brothers. The Ackerman brothers lived on County Road 5, and over a span of time, they had numerous unusual things to happen. They would hear these howls at night, and they would be outside, and they would have something in the woods that would throw rocks into their yard, kind of unexplained. They didn't know what it was about. But on one occasion, they were all outside, and they saw what they describe as one of these Bigfoot creatures cross the road. I've talked with them numerous times, dozens of times over the last 3 or 4 years. They have never once changed one word of their story. They've never tried to embellish it or add to it or anything like that that would kind of set off my reporter radar that something's not right. And to me, that makes them very credible. And these people aren't seeking publicity. They're not wanting their name in the paper. They just want, somebody to know about what's happened to them.
I've interviewed people that's been trying to hunt in a deer stand. They've hunted it for years. They go in there and get in there just one time there, and these things come in there and raise all kinds of cane, ripping trees up and everything else, pushing them out, scaring them out of there. And they're like, man, I'll never hunt that area again. And then I've had hunters tell me these things was charging them, and they would raise their gun at them, and they'd stop and back up, and they'd start ripping trees up and everything. And they're like, as they turn to leave, if they turn their eyes off them, they'd try to charge them again and turn around and point their gun at them, and they'd stop.
Did Luther talk to you about the lady that used to live between like maybe Mexie and Purdue Hill, somewhere in that area, that when she was a little girl, she encountered one in a plum thicket?
And who are we talking to here?
Glenda Bush.
Glenda Bush. All right, now you had an encounter with a Bigfoot.
Yes, I did. One evening, I was picking up plants, and just like in the movies, I heard a stick break. I looked down. I was looking at two legs. It was reddish, brown, black in color. I started at it at the foot. It had foot like it was a man, like it was a human man. And as I went on up, looking, this body was huge. And then it hit me. I smelled something like it was dead, like a dead dog, a bunch of dogs that was dead and was rotting. And as I continued to look up, this thing, whatever it was, had parted the plum tree. And as I kept looking up, and this thing's mouth was open, it looked like a bear snout, but it wasn't. And I remember seeing all of these pointed, sharp teeth, like they was rotten. I looked into pure red eyes, and they was glowing. And even back then, as a child, I knew that I was looking at my death. And I'm telling you, I don't know how I got through that boat hole. But as I was getting through that boat hole, I could actually feel this thing when it hit me on my shoulder. And it opened my shoulder all the way down, almost to the bone. And at that point in time, I was screaming. And I remember as that thing hit me, it was like I froze, and it was like something just pushed me through that fence. And as I was running, and I looked back, and it was gone.
Now it was going to, I don't know what it was going to do, but it was going to hurt her in some manner. I mean, it did. It hurt her back.
And I listened to it, and I had the guys from the Bigfoot Association that were in with us a day or two ago. And they believed her too, because you can tell she's sincere about what she's talking about. And I believed her. Cut her up pretty bad.
One interesting aspect of all this is I get a number of calls from time to time from people who want no publicity at all. They'll say, hey, look, this isn't for the newspaper or anything, but I just want you to know this happened. And they'll go on to describe like a classic Bigfoot encounter, or where they'll hear something unusual in the woods. These are, we live in Alabama. People are kind of geared towards being in the outdoors. A lot of people live in rural communities where they've pretty much lived their entire lives. So when you have someone like that tell you they've heard an unusual noise that they can't explain, that's kind of noteworthy to me.
But every year you have hunters that go into the woods and no trace of them ever found. It makes me wonder what happens to them.
I'm not going to say that I don't believe they're not naturally aggressive. I'm saying that they're a wild animal, and any wild animal can be aggressive. The wife and I was sitting there watching TV one night, and our kids was on the back of our property riding four-wheelers. That area it's not right. You can feel the presence there that you really shouldn't be there. It just has that feeling to it. So we're sitting here watching TV one night, and I hear my oldest son's four-wheeler come flying up to the front porch, and he comes running in the front door, and he's just rattling off 90 miles an hour. Dad, a Bigfoot grabbed Brady's four-wheeler. Like, what? So I jump up, I grab a rifle and my truck keys. I told him, I said, get in the truck. So we jumped in the truck. They're like, what are you going to do? I said, if I see hair, I'm knocking it down. I mean, he's done went too far this time. Now it's messing with my children. This is unacceptable. And I rode slow, rode fast. I rode fast getting back there and didn't see anything. I'm going real slow. I'm shining the light in the woods and everything. Didn't see anything. Well, this is the story of what happened. They went down the left side of the property and they got to this one curve. And my youngest son, he's my Bigfoot hunting buddy. I mean, he's the one that's followed me into this. When it comes to be the next generation of the GCBRO, my son will be one of the members. He's driving slow in his four-wheeler, He said out of nowhere, the four-wheeler just come to an abrupt stop. He said that he felt the back end go down, and he said you could see the headlights go up, and he said he felt something. He just felt a presence. I said, did you look back? He said, no, Dad. I knew something was there. I was scared to see what was behind me. You know, he's caught. No matter what, he's caught. Well, out of nowhere, the back of the four-wheeler just popped up, and it bogged, and then then everything caught, and it took off, and then he come flying back to the house telling me what happened. We have found a couple of footprints where it's come through at different times late at night. I've got a score to settle with that one.
One that comes to mind was a lady was traveling down 65 going somewhere south. She was close to Love's, and there's like a swampy bottom place there. She had her two daughters with her, and she says, there's this thing walking up the side of the interstate, not like a bear and not like an ape, but it's walking on 2 feet, 2 legs, and it's covered with this brown-looking hair. And of course, you're going fast on the interstate, but she was able to see it and go by it and see it in the rearview mirror. And then she called to tell. That, to me, you're really putting yourself out there to call and tell you saw something like that. But how would you even think up that, that you saw that?
Now, I've had this happen several times, and this makes me, these are the type of things that I would doubt. Like teenagers that send me a picture of a Bigfoot track that they found while they were walking down a creek. It may be legit, but kind of considering the source and how easy it would be to fake something like that, I don't think we've ever run a Bigfoot track picture in the newspaper. And I have put it out there. I've told people, like, hey, look, if you honestly think that you have found a Bigfoot track, now don't go out and fake one, but if you think you have found one, you call me, and I will come to where you are, and I will photograph it and take a plaster cast of it. But I make it clear to people, like, now don't drag me out in the woods for something that's going to be fake. Now, over the last 3 or 4 years, I've kind of tried to educate myself on Bigfoot and tracks, and there are a lot of good books out there, and a lot of these books are about how people have fake stuff like this. So I'm not saying I'm an expert and can't be fooled, but I kind of have an eye for what may not be legit.
The ones that I find that are believable, usually, most times the people they're very reluctant to talk to you. They don't really want their story out there. Those are the ones, to me, it's like, okay, there's got to be something going on. And then what I have found is as you piece stories together, the story that they tell is very similar to a story you heard months ago. And then being around the guys in the GCBRO, you kind of learn a little bit about how these things behave and how they act and what they do. Then you go out there and look around and you see big wide trails coming up to the house, or limbs snapped, or, a good food source or bedding areas close by. You think it's a possibility.
When I was 4 years old, we lived in just a little north of Nacogdoches, Texas, a little town called Garrison, Texas. I heard something scratching on the screen. When I looked up, I seen a creature. It was showing its teeth and motioning for me to come to the window. Well, I'm totally traumatized by this. I freak out. I jump on my other brother, one of my brothers. I jump on him, and I'm choking him, because I'm just in a panic, and I didn't realize what I was doing. Well, he raised up and saw it turn to run from the window. When I got 18 years old, I talked to my oldest brother. And this, I had people tell me, there ain't no way you could remember 4 years old what happened back then. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember it very vividly. Well, when I was 18, I talked to my oldest brother. In 1969, he was 14 and a half to 15 years old. He had it do the same thing to him 3 different times. He woke up in the middle of the night, and he heard something scratching on the screen. And he raised up to look, and he said there was this evil, apish looking face, and it was showing its teeth, and it was motioning for him to come to the window. He would shake his head no, and he said he said this was, if that wasn't bad enough, it would shake its head yes. Keep doing this, showing its teeth. He said he would throw the covers over his head, and he said I was doing everything I could to scream, Mama, Daddy, Mama, Daddy. He said, I don't know if I was screaming or not. In my mind, I was screaming as loud as I could. He said I would just sit there and cry and shake. He said eventually I would fall asleep and I'd wake up, it'd be daylight. Of course, it'd be gone. He said, Bobby, it did it 3 times to me. And I turned around and told I was married at 18. I told my wife, I said, I told you. Yeah, I've lived with that trauma my whole life. Well, I still, even though I hunt these things today, I still will not sleep next to an open window, whether it's raised or one that's not completely covered.
You know, just recently we had a kid that was coming out of the woods hunting and saw one, and when the light hit him, it crouched down, scared the kid so bad he sat down by a tree, and this thing started running circles around him, grunting and hollering until his mama could come out there and get him. You know, you hear stories like that, and, you know, that just happened just a few weeks ago. There's a lot of stories like that, and I'm intrigued by all of them. I've had cows, farmers talk about cows being killed, cows walking off over a fence somehow, or finding it lifted over a fence and killed. You know, like one particular time, I was doing an epidural on a young girl up at the hospital. And she said, oh, you're that Bigfoot guy on the radio show. I said, yeah, you know. And she goes, well, I've seen one. I said, really? So I'm doing her epidural, and she's telling me about it, you know. So you know it's legit, because she's in a lot of pain, and I'm digging in her back doing an epidural. So, you know, I don't think you'd be lying about something at that particular point in time, but she saw it across a road, and there's some railroad tracks. What she didn't know is I had a very same report from a guy that saw one cross the road there a few years back in the same area. So that's 2 stories right there that they never talked to each other, and I get a lot of that.
A common story is a motorist is driving down the road and they see something off the side of the road in the ditch, and then it either darts across the road or goes back into the woods. That's kind of a typical story. Now, now the game wardens come into our office all the time for different reasons, and you talk with them, and their thing is these people are seeing bears. You know, people are riding along, maybe at night, the lights are a little low, and they see something on the side of the road, and everybody's kind of got Bigfoot in mind because of Evergreen, and they automatically assume that they've seen one of these Bigfoot creatures, but they've just seen a bear that's standing up on its hind legs, you know, maybe getting something out of a tree like food or whatever, you know. But the thing about bears is they don't run on 2 feet. Like if it's running, it's going to drop down. And the game wardens tell us that a lot of these tracks that people claim to find are also bears. And the explanation they give is like when a bear walks, they put the front foot down and then the back foot comes along behind it, and it makes an extended looking track with toes in the front. And they see people see these things and they think, oh my gosh, it's a Bigfoot track, but it's just, you know, to the game wardens, it's just a bear.
My first experience was on a place outside of Repton. I was hunting there. All I had was a shotgun. Couldn't afford a rifle at the time, and had double-aught buckshot in it. Found an old field, probably hadn't been farmed in 75 years, you know. Sat off that field on the fire lane, and there was planted pines in front of me, hardwoods behind me. It got dark, moon came up, so I thought, you know, I was young and dumb. I said, well, I'll sit out here and do a little outlawing. I figured a deer would feed up in that field, come down that fire lane, you know, get some water. You didn't see as many deer here back then, and really I was just really figuring out how to hunt. After dark, something was on top of that hill off of that pasture, and it was popping its teeth. Just pop, 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 pop. I was like, oh, okay. I figured it was a hog, because we do have a lot of hogs down here, and they will pop their teeth. Bears will pop their teeth. But you'll also read some of your great apes, gorillas and stuff I found out later will pop their teeth as well, especially if they start getting aggravated. I sat there and nothing. And about that time, something starts barreling down in the trees, and it literally, it sounded like a bulldozer coming through the woods. And that's what my brain was saying. It's like, my gosh, that's a bulldozer. What in the world's a bulldozer doing out here this time of night? Trees were snapping and popping, the ground was shaking, and it was making its way down the hill to where I was. And then it hit me. I was like, that's not a bulldozer. I said, there's no engine, you know, but your brain can't wrap around exactly. I was like, what in the world is that? It got right in front of me and stopped. I was looking for a tree to climb. There wasn't a tree to climb. I knew that gun I had wasn't going to do nothing but make it mad. It wasn't going to protect me. I can promise you. You just felt that. And every instinct in my body was like either be still or run. So I sat there and I was still, I didn't breathe. And it was probably 20 yards in front of me through the trees, but it was dark. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I said, okay, I got to run. And I got up and got out of there. But since then, that's when I was like, okay, and then started hearing other stories and kids going out on that road parking and it walking out of the trees on them and chasing people out of there. I knew then, I was like, okay, there's something to this.
We had come back from town one night. My aunt and cousin was spending the night with us. When we got out of the car to go in the house, we heard something in the barn. So my mom went in, got her pistol and a flashlight, and heard my aunt was leading the way. They told us to stay back, but we're kids, we're going to follow them. So we followed them towards the barn, and as she was rounding the corner of the barn, something let out a real deep, evil, and like she even said, it was a demonic growl. And she said, I've never heard anything like this in my life. And when it did, man, her and my aunt, they throwed their hands up and they outrun the kids back to the house. I mean, it really spooked them. And my mom, she's an old country girl. I mean, she grew up in the mountains of southeast Oklahoma up on Winding Stair Mountain. And she's lived in the woods her whole life. And she said, Bobby, I've never heard anything like this. So that was an eye opener. And of course, I knew what I had seen, and I knew that I wanted to find answers. And that led me to where, I started, getting out researching and doing what I do now.
I've had a lot of other stories happen, where I hunt now. I've had my son, who was 12 years old at the time, had one shake the shooting house on him. He got a good look at it and said it was probably 8-9 foot. His head was above the roof of that shooting house, and the shooting house was about 8 foot. And he took off running, and he come around, and he said it was standing up, and it was shaking, trying to get inside the shooting house. I found footprints then. Me and my uncle went after it. Obviously, I was pretty upset. And we went in there to try to find it, found a bunch of limbs snapped off where it had gone through that creek branch. And then it was just one thing after another after that. The shooting house shook. My camper trailer had been shaking in the middle of the night, just shook. I've had a dog killed up there that I can't explain. And I heard it holler one time, and that'll rattle you. It was almost like a man saying, hey, like, hey, but then it went real high pitched, like a siren. It was like an 800-pound man and a siren going off. And it was literally vibrating off my chest. And this was just 3 years ago. It stunned me. And I wasn't expecting that. And I was bow hunting. So I didn't even have a gun, didn't have a knife, didn't even have a flashlight. I very seldom use a flashlight in the woods. So yeah, that was a little scary walking out of that bottom at night with that thing out there. That particular night, I was probably 30 foot up in the tree, and I hadn't long been up there. And I heard something come behind me and just start walking. It was on 2 legs. There's a hunter in the woods. You can tell what's on 4 legs, on 2 legs. And it was walking back and forth behind me, probably 20 yards, just walking back and forth, and it sounded heavy. And it was on 2 legs, and I wasn't moving. I had my back to it. I was going to try to wait on it to come around the front, and finally it just stopped. And then all of a sudden I heard something right past my head and hit some limbs. I mean, it threw something at me. I don't know what it was. It was dark. But I heard it whiz by my head, and I'm 30 foot up the tree, and hit some limbs in front of me. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm turning around. I was like, all right, enough of this. So I turn around and turn on my light, and nothing. I think it throws stuff because it don't want you around. It's trying to kind of get you out of the area, or it just may be throwing stuff just to see what your reaction will be. I do know from all the stories and some of the GC Burrow stuff, these things are very curious. They do like to come around houses and look, and and they'll do stuff just out of curiosity. But I think it threw a rock at me that night because it knew I was there. It probably watched me get up in the tree. It wasn't happy that I was on their trail.
I think location is one thing. I know most of these people, and believability, credibility. If they tell me they saw one, I believe them. And there's been too many people. I'm talking about preachers, a whole wide range of people. I don't think there's anything magical about them. I don't think they can make themselves disappear. I just think that they do exist. They're out there.
All kinds of noises can be heard in the woods from all different kinds of critters. But how does one know when they've heard a Bigfoot? Some say it'll make the hair on the back of your neck stand. Some say you know it when you hear it. Some think that they know exactly what a Bigfoot sounds like.
I'll tell you another interesting experience I had with this Bigfoot stuff. Wesley Ackerman is the Ackerman brother that is the minister. Well, he has two young sons, and they often go out into the woods and what he calls Bigfoot hunt. And what it amounts to is they go out to where he had seen this, him and his brothers had seen these creatures before, and they would do these howls, and they're kind of looking for like a response. Well, I'd never been on anything like this before, and I've done ghost investigations and all this kind of stuff, you know, like usually around Halloween, we would do stuff like that. But I'd never been on a Bigfoot hunt. So Wesley invited me to go with him one night, and I just wanted to go to see how they did this, what their techniques and methods were. And we're out in a remote area. There aren't very many people that live around here at all, and it's pretty late at night. You know, I grew up, you know, in rural Alabama. I like to think that I'm kind of outdoorsy. You know, I know what a coyote might sound like or an owl might sound like. Well, we're out there, right? And Wesley's making these howls, and there were a couple of times where, as we're standing there, I can kind of hear something respond, you know, to what he's doing. Now, I don't think it was like an echo of what he was doing, or somebody maybe in their backyard a mile away that heard him that was kind of doing it. To me, it sounded like something kind of answering him, and it was very strange in the moment to be there. And you know, Wesley and his sons were well armed, so I felt pretty safe. But it was strange, you know.
I had some hunters up in North End that kind of called me last year. They had something holler on them very similar to what happened to me in the middle of the day, scared the mess out of them. And started researching and saw it was the Bigfoot capital of Alabama. And they said, that's got to be what we heard. And then they called in. So it has generated a lot more talk about it anyway.
It really started, I would say, maybe 10 years ago. There was a man up in the north end of the county. He was a preacher. He and his two brothers had an encounter with one. Very reputable people. Then another man up in that area had one hollering out behind his house. Now this is what he said it sounded like. He said they beat on a tree with a stick, and that's their mating call.
Yes, Evergreen is starting to make a name for itself. But Bigfoot isn't the only game in town. Evergreen is not just the Bigfoot capital of Alabama. It's also the collard green capital of Alabama. Every year, Evergreen puts on a collard green festival where people come from far and wide to eat, enjoy some arts and crafts, and of course, hear the roars of the Bigfoot calling competition.
We're also the collard green capital of Alabama.
The Bigfoot stuff has been incorporated into a number of events.
We have a Bigfoot calling contest.
Okay, now I gotta do my Bigfoot call. All right, go ahead. All right, this is my demonstration of the Bigfoot call. I said, hey, the way you do it, Tony? Yep. Tell me again one more time. I think the Bigfoot's gonna come get us, Tony.
Oh yes, oh yes. It's a sight to hear.
They had a rodeo at one of these festivals, and there were some horses that were pinned up maybe 100 yards from where they were having this Bigfoot calling contest. Those animals were kind of getting stirred up, like they didn't know what was making this racket, because it was, if you didn't know, like if you heard this out in the middle of the woods, it'd be kind of nerve-wracking.
My vocal cords could not demonstrate to you what it would be like. I don't see how they do that. Yes, we have a Bigfoot calling contest.
First one that was held, and I think it was held at the Conecuh Sausage Festival in 2016, and the grand prize was like $500, and there were a lot of entries.
His not Tony is Bigfoot. Bigfoot Evergreen, Alabama. Oh, okay. All right, here it goes. Whoa! How y'all like that? Pretty good. Hey, I just like Bigfoot, ain't you? I know y'all want to come up there and see me, ain't you? Oh yeah.
Any of you that want to enter the Bigfoot calling contest, come on up and sign up. We're going to start it here about 45 minutes. We're going to let the audience decide the winner, so.
Did I got to see you to sign up for the Sasquatch competition?
I kind of think we'll do more. It's kind of catching on a little bit.
You want to sign up?
All right, what's your name, young man? We got you on there.
We do go out in the woods and we do look for Bigfoot. We've seen some signs, fur, footprint stuff, and just, he's a believer, so we go out there and call him every now and then.
I am ready to get the show on the road.
A lot of people get their idea about what a Bigfoot sounds like from television. Like you have these different TV shows like Finding Bigfoot or Killing Bigfoot, and people watch these shows and they see how people do these Bigfoot howls and stuff like, whatever they do. Well, they come to these contests and they often mimic what they hear on these TV shows. But what's interesting is there have been a number of Bigfoot witnesses that have been in these contests, and their calls are markedly different than what you would see on television.
I've never heard one other than what I have here. But I think it's the enthusiasm with which the contestants approach it. That's what's really fun to watch.
The judges is going to be a People's Choice Award, so it's based on your vote for whatever candidate you think does the best Bigfoot calling job.
It's just got to sound right. It's got to sound extremely well.
All right, give us your best Bigfoot call.
Woo! Woo! Bigfoot! Come on, baby! Yeah, Bigfoot, hey, little quarter.
Have you ever seen a Bigfoot? Neither. Okay. Who we got next? Go back.
Tony Kyle.
Tony Kyles. Come on up here, Tony. Tony Kyles, ladies and gentlemen, former defending champion. All right, Tony.
Okay. All right, here it goes.
All right.
With the cash prize of $500, I've seen people that have lost, that thought they should have won, that have left these contests kind of mad. Yeah, like stomp off the stage, like, I can't believe I didn't win,
All right, let's get all our contestants up here. Line them up right here. Let's hear it for Mary Kate. Let's hear it for Tony. First place. Second place. Third place. Thank y'all. Congratulations, Tony and Mary Caitlin and Mark, right?
I regained my champion again, though I'm so proud of myself. I don't know what to do. I am the man of Conecuh County, Alabama.
Evergreen at first look seems like any other sleepy little southern town. But look again, and it's anything but. It's a group of people that's passionate about their community. A town that is yet to finish writing their story. Much like Bigfoot, the future of this town is a mystery.
I'd like to think Bigfoots exist, and if one does, I wish we could have one in captivity here. Take care of it and let people see it and study it. maybe even have a family of them.
A lot of people in town were embarrassed by the fact that we were the Bigfoot capital of Alabama, and they complained, but they're not complaining anymore.
Well, some people, I will say, they're like, okay, now if Ashley says there's something out there, there must be something out there. But then there's some that's like, oh man, he's crazy, or he's just doing that for entertainment, right?
I would think the people that are kind of angered by the maybe negative attention as they perceive it are very few.
We might have thought of something better to have to be the capital of, but it's not too bad of a thing.
Yeah, but you know, we like to have fun with it. You know, life's too short to take everything really too serious.
I like being the Bigfoot capital of Alabama. When you go to the Alabama League of Municipalities meeting, all you gotta do is say Evergreen. That's where y'all got the Bigfoot. Yeah, that's right.
No one knows what the future holds, but a handful of people have a few ideas.
I'm telling you, if we get us a living Bigfoot, anything's possible after that. You're gonna hear about Evergreen, Alabama. You're coming to Evergreen. We'll see about you. You can see our Bigfoot. You can't torment him.
All right, it's about time for us to ease on out of here. Y'all check on your mom and them, and we'll see y'all on the radio, if the Lord's willing, in the morning about 6:05.